In a few minutes, just to let everyone know, please mute your lines if you are not speaking. And we are going to begin the recording now just to get everything ready to go when we call the meeting to order.
Are you ready, Dave?
Yes, sir. I think we're just making sure we have all the commissioners on.
Okay.
I think we got one more we're waiting on, but give me just 1 minute.
Yep.
It's time to love back. Yeah, I follow that everybody's shit.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. If we're missing a commissioner, I'll try to reach out to them after we do the roll call. So, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, folks, if you can mute your microphone if you're not speaking, we've got some background noise. David, I don't know, can you mute it from the control? You control?
Hold on a second. We'll see if we can do it.
Yeah, somebody, whoever's running the show should be able to mute it.
I'm not gonna be a part of that. So me and Rose.
Salita Stubbs, could you mute your microphone, please? We're getting a lot of background. You got it? Okay.
Yep, we got it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, somebody just need to monitor that if we need to. Welcome everyone to the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged Business Meeting held on the Ides of March here. We'll now call this meeting to order. David Darn, would you please call the roll? Commissioners, remember to unmute your line.
Okay, when I call your name, please signify by saying aye. And by the way, if you're calling in, please hit *6 to unmute your line. Chair Stevens.
Here.
Vice Chair Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Barrios. Commissioner Barrios. If you're calling in, please hit *6. Thank you. Sure. Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Tellez.
Here.
I believe a quorum is present, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are hosting this meeting via webinar. Just remember to mute your microphone or *6 if you're on the phone, just the phone line. So as you're able, please stand and follow along with me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We now ask commissioners and advisors to introduce themselves and agency that you represent on the commission. Remember, you got to hit *6 to unmute as we move forward. So with that, Commissioner Gray, would you start?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Gray. I'm from Brevard County. I've been on the commission since 2019, and I've served various positions in work and otherwise, advocating for people with disabilities. I have cerebral palsy, and my interest in being on the commission is the fact that it's very difficult for me to get around since I cannot drive due to my CP. And on top of all that, I have a son who is not disabled, so it makes it very complicated as he was younger and a bit now to get him around to places that we need to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Barrios. Remember to hit *6.
Hi, I'm Lillian Barrios from the Tallahassee area. I've been on the commission for almost a year now. My interest is as a user with a visual impairment, and also have background in public health, so I am glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight.
Good morning, everyone.
We can't hear you, Commissioner Knight.
Not at all.
Oh, there you go. That's better. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right, I'll start over.
Yeah.
I am Renee Knight, Vice President of Community Services for ElderSource. I have been on the commission since 2019. I live in the Jacksonville, Florida area. I have over 27 years experience working with seniors and senior programs. And as everyone knows, accessible transportation is a key concern and a critical need for many older adults. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you. Commissioner Tellez.
Good morning, everyone. I'm hoping everyone is doing well. I'm calling from actually Miami-Dade County. I have been on the commission since 2016. I'm a registered nurse and recently retired from Baptist Health South Florida. My interest really started with a program that Baptist started with persons with disabilities and dealing with some of the difficulties of transportation for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself, Phil Stevens. I reside in the Tampa, Florida area. I've been a transportation engineer for over 30 years. Got involved with the commission 3 or 4 years ago, primarily because my son Jared, who's actually in the room with me here, and a lot of y'all have met him. He has cerebral palsy, is in a wheelchair, so public transportation is very important to be able to get to life, pretty much. So anyway, so glad to have everyone on the call today. Just want to go over some of the meeting rules very quickly. This is a public meeting and it does operate under Florida's Government in the Sunshine Act. The meeting is being recorded and all verbal, written, and text. So anything in the chat boxes, anything will be logged within the meeting minutes. So just keep that in mind. We do advise commissioners to not communicate privately. Even the chat box is not allowed with other board members to make sure that we stay compliant with the Sunshine Act. For the public comment segments, we'll follow our usual format. The first public comment segment is for agenda items only. And then the second one toward the end of the meeting will be for any topic. So again, the first one, please restrict your comments to the agenda and later to any comments. We've asked anybody intending to speak to submit a public comment form prior to the meeting. And by what means, either webinar or phone, we'll follow the order of those who submitted a form. We'll call on first, then we'll go to the webinar, then we'll go to the phone lines. So we'll follow that. So just remember to gotta hit *6 to unmute the phone line, and you gotta also unmute on the webinar. We ask that you identify your name if you represent an organization anyway, and your county of residence would be great. During both public comment periods, you are limited to 5 minutes. So remember that. With that, we'll go into the first public comment period. We'll call on speakers, like I said, who submitted a form in advance, and then we'll go to the webinar, and then we'll go to the phone. And remember, the 5-minute limit in this first segment is restricted to agenda items. So, Director Darm, do we have any forms submitted?
Mr. Chair, we received one public comment form prior to the meeting, and it's from Julia Davis, but she is not going to be here to be able to speak. So she's asked one of our team members to read her comments for the record. So if Sherry or anybody on the CTD staff could unmute your line and read that. And then from there, we'll go into anybody on the public who wants to speak. Please indicate in the chat box and we'll call on your name.
Okay, this is Sherry Powers with the commission, and the statement is from, again, Julia Davis with the Polk Transportation Planning Organization. She wanted to comment regarding the commission's legislative platform, and I will read her email. This past August at the CTD conference during the planning meeting, many TD planners voiced significant difficulty achieving a quorum of members because some of the LCB members are still needing to attend on virtual platforms. During COVID, Governor DeSantis made an emergency declaration which allowed us to count LCB members attending virtually towards the quorum. That made it possible for LCB members attending virtually to fully participate in the LCB meetings. The emergency declaration was rescinded in late 2020. However, the need to attend virtually still exists. Meeting virtually and having their presence count towards the business of the LCBs continues to be very helpful for LCB members who represent the elderly or at-risk children or people with disabilities to protect the health of the user groups they represent. And this provision also makes it possible for LCB members representing state agencies to attend the meetings, since many state agencies had their travel restricted for various reasons during COVID and even longer. Many state agencies are located in regional offices, not local offices. I am hoping that this could be added to the legislative platform. It would be so very helpful to the LCBs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If that's the only advance card, anybody on the webinar wish to make public comment? Or on the phone, remember to hit *6. Okay, with that, we'll close the first public comment period. I do want to, I forgot to call on folks, any advisors, anyone else. I'd introduce the commissioners. Are there any anyone else on the phone? Any advisors? I forgot to call on you. I want to go back and get those folks.
Rochelle Munson is on the line, counsel to the commission. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Krista Carter is on the line.
Okay. Hi. Good morning, Krista.
This is Gabe Matthews from FDOT, Interim Transit Director.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Anyone else? Any other advisors on the call? If not, let's move on to the meeting minutes. We convened our business meeting via webinar back on December 15th. The draft minutes were provided in the business meeting package. Before we take a vote, are there any questions or revisions on the meeting minutes for December 15th? If not, I need a motion to approve the December 15 meeting minutes.
Commissioner Knight makes the motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. I need a second.
Commissioner Gray seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. All those in favor of approving December 15 meeting minutes as represented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So the meeting minutes are approved. Now let's move to the Community Transportation Coordinator designations portion of the agenda. Most of you are aware the Commission is responsible for designating a Community Transportation Coordinator to arrange transportation disadvantaged services in each county in the state of Florida. The local planning agency is responsible for recommending a CTC for the service area. Today we have 4 CTC designations represented on this agenda. And the first one is Ann McLaughlin from Collier County will present the first recommendation for the CTC of Collier.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here and to listen to the commissioner speak. It's very informative for me because I've replaced the staff person that used to do this, and I'm learning how to do it as I go. So the Collier County CTC recommendation is coming from the Collier MPO under the Florida statutes. We are the designated official planning agency, and we're recommending the Community Transportation Coordinator continue to be the Collier County Board of County Commissioners, known locally under Collier Area Transit. They're currently the CTC, and they're providing transportation disadvantaged services to the citizens of Collier County. And so the Collier County Board of County Commissioners first deemed it appropriate and in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare to continue to provide transportation disadvantaged services in Collier County. And at their December 9th, 2022 board meeting, they signed a resolution requesting the CTD approve Collier County Board of County Commissions as the designated CTC for Collier County. So both the Collier County Board of County Commissioners approved a resolution, and the MPO approved a resolution to continue their designation.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions about the recommendation from Collier County? If not, I need a motion to approve Collier Area Transit as the CTC designation of Collier County.
This is Commissioner Tellez. I approve.
Thank you. I need a second.
This is Commissioner Gray. I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? If not, then Collier Area Transit is approved as a CTC designation for Collier. So thank you, Ms. McLaughlin.
And thank you.
Yeah. Next, Virginia Whittington from Metro Plan Orlando will present the recommendation for CTC of Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. Are you on, Ms. Whittington?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our recommendation today. My name is Virginia Whittington. I'm the Director of Regional Partnerships for Metro Plan Orlando. We serve as the designated official planning agency for Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties. The Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority, doing business as LINKS, has been the community transportation coordinator for Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties since 1992. They continue to be a great partner. We work well together. And the LINKS board expressed its interest in continuing as the CTC by recommendation of the staff at their December 15th board meeting. The Metro Plan Orlando board adopted a resolution and approved the recommendation of staff. And we have submitted all required documents and to the commission, and respectfully request your approval of the recommendation for LINKS to continue as the CTC for Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties through June 2028. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Commissioners, any questions about this recommendation? Remember, this is a multi-county service area, so we will only be voting one time for all three counties, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. If there's no questions, I need a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Barrios. I'm moved to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrios. I need a second.
This is Commissioner Gray. I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Not, then LINKS is approved as a CTC for Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Next up, Michael Woods from Lake Sumter. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Yep. Lake Sumter MPO will present two recommendations. First, the CTC for Lake County, and then the CTC for Sumter County. We will vote on those independently. So, Mr. Woods, are you online?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, good morning. Thank you for hosting this meeting. The Lake Sumter MPO board approved the recommendation for Lake County Board of County Commissioners at their February 22nd meeting, and we're happy to bring that recommendation to the commission today. They're a great partner with the MPO, and we look forward to working them through the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Wood on Lake County? If not, then I would need a motion to approve.
Commissioner Tellez approves.
Thank you. I need a second, please.
Commissioner Gray seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. All those in favor of approving Lake County Board of County Commissioners as CTC indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Then they are approved. Mr. Wood, do you want to do Sumter County now?
Yes, at the February 22nd meeting, the Lake Sumter MPO Board approved the recommendation for Sumter County Board of County Commissioners to continue as the CTC for Sumter County. We have a pleasure working with Sumter County Transit, a great small rural agency, and we look forward to working with them in the future. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Any questions about Sumter County? If not, then I need a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Barrios. I motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrios. I need a second.
Commissioner Knight, seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. All those in favor of approving Sumter County Transit as the CTC for Sumter County indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Woods.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. So this concludes the action items for today, and we'll move on to informational items. This morning, we're going to talk about the annual operating report study. We're going to get a presentation on the study pertaining to the AOR. Commissioner Knight is going to do an introduction, and then Casey Perkins is going to give us a progress report on the status. So with that, Commissioner Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Each year, the Commission is required to collect data on transportation operations related to serving the transportation disadvantaged population in the state. This data is collected and submitted by CTCs within their AORs by September the 15th of each year. The Commission then compiles the information for the annual performance report and provides the information to the governor and legislatures on January 1st each year. The AOR provides a high-level, system-wide overview of various transportation services performed by the CTC and other human service agencies, also known as coordination contractors, in each county of the state. The data is summarized in an aggregate format representing services that were performed during the state fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. The AOR consists of quantitative data on trips, such as service type, trip purpose, and passenger head count, and other information about the CTC's operation. For approximately 20 years, the Commission allocated a portion of a county's trip and equipment grant funding based on the total number of trips and miles reported in its AOR. In 2020, the Commission adopted a new funding formula, which replaced the AOR with the invoice data of services that the CTC directly provided under the Trip and Equipment Grant Program. This decision was based in part to concern about the inconsistencies in how the data was collected and reported within the AOR. The 2020 funding allocation study recommended the Commission reevaluate the role of the AOR in measuring the performance of the broader coordinated transportation disadvantage system. This year, the Commission contracted with Thomas Howe Ferguson to assist in this study to help us improve the accuracy and analysis of data reported in the AOR. At this time, Casey Perkins will now provide an overview of the study's objectives and the areas of focus.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Casey.
All right, good. So to repeat what Commissioner Knight just said, just a little bit, just to start with the background, and we'll get into sort of the thought processes that, we've come to at this point. But background on the AOR, it's a report consisting of quantitative data, which the CTCs report to the Commission every year. So the data is reported annually. And it includes trip totals broken down by variables such as funding source, trip purpose, passenger eligibility type, etc. And by funding source, that means it's trips provided outside of CTD's own trip and equipment grant program. It also includes other operational data such as financial data and vehicle data, but trips are the primary source of information as it relates to what services are being provided to the TD population. And the AOR is a large piece of the annual performance report, or APR, that is officially submitted to the governor and Florida legislature on January 1 of each year. Next slide. So why does CTD collect this data? Well, in short, because Florida statutes requires the commission to do so in chapter 427. So on this slide, starting with the first bullet, you can see how sweeping the language is, all available information. This is why the commission, through the AOR, collects data on transportation services beyond those provided under its own trip and equipment grant. On the second bullet, as mentioned on the previous slide, it's a big piece of the annual performance report. And on the third bullet, as also mentioned, the CTCs are the ones who really report this data to the commission. There is some other data such as taken from the census about county population and whatnot, but overwhelmingly, this is data CTCs report to the commission. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, the AOR is a major piece of the annual performance report, and the executive summary really lays this out at the beginning. Highlights it as one of two primary sources of information, along with the trip and equipment grant invoice data. And as it currently stands, compared to the AOR, the trip and equipment invoice data is much more granular in its detail and obviously specific to the commission's own program. Hence the executive summary making the distinction between the two data sets as micro and macro views of TD services. Next slide. So here we're getting into the study's purpose and objectives. Across the top is the official articulated purpose of the study, which is to improve the accuracy and analyses of data in the AOR. And it's important to note here that this study that we are doing, it's one focused on data collection and processes. It's not considering specific IT, hardware, software needs or solutions. It is tool agnostic, so to speak. It's a study about data. So the study has three main objectives across the bottom there. First one, assess the current role of the AOR in terms of how data is reported by CTCs and collected by the commission. Number two, verifying. Generally speaking, whenever we collect data in any situation, not just as relates to this, but in general, we want confidence that the data is telling us what we think it seems to be telling us. Nobody wants to rely on invalid data or misinterpret data. Third objective, analyze. Analysis is the ultimate aim behind collecting data in the first place. So we want to have an idea of what sorts of analyses we want to do. So next slide. Here we have an example of what is in the AOR and what it tells us about a specific county, in this case, Indian River. And we chose Indian River because Indian River CTC is actually participating in the work groups for this study. That's why we chose them. But again, it's just an example. There's nothing really specific to them here. But the summary is shown here. It's like any other county. But in this example, I want to focus your attention on the data relating to trips. So Indian River reported 61,377 trips. And the AOR breaks down these trips in four different ways: service type, passenger eligibility, funding source or revenue source, and provider type. And the key takeaway here is that the data and the AOR is aggregated, as Commissioner Knight actually mentioned. That is, CTCs do not provide the commission with raw data on trips. They don't provide data tables of 61,377 trips. They just summarize the data. So in this example, but again, every county does it this way, the 61,377 trips are summarized in four different ways. Next slide. So summarizing or aggregating the data like the AOR does, it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. And the primary advantage lies in presentation. So just by looking at that last slide, you can immediately take away some key insights. As an example, that, with Indian River, just by glancing, you can see of those 61,000 trips, 13,834 trips were funded by CTD. Similarly, you can also see that 5,312 trips were for the purpose of helping the TD writer with employment. You can't do this looking at raw data. If you look at a table and it's got 61,000 rows, that's not immediately obvious. So that's the advantage of aggregated data. The weakness of aggregated data lies in when we try to answer more precise or more specific questions about our data. So again, going back to Indian River, even though we know how many trips are CTD trips and how many are for the purpose of employment, we don't know how many CTD trips are for the purpose of employment because the data is not, as it currently works, broken down to that level of detail. So we highlight this distinction between aggregated and disaggregated data because deciding the extent to which you want data reported to you to be aggregated or disaggregated, it's a fundamental importance of what you want your data to be able to tell you. Next slide. So in thinking about what you want your data to be able to tell you, it's helpful to keep in mind the full data analysis process, which is shown here. And this process, it's called PPDAC, and that's the only time I'll say that, but stands for Problem, Plan, Data, Analysis, and Conclusion. And it's actually a very widely accepted approach in fields such as statistics and data science for thinking about data analysis. But we're showing this here to begin with, because when people think about data and data analysis, they think of it in terms of step 5 a lot. Step 5 gets overemphasized. And the reason for that is that's the only step most people see. They think of, or they see a graph, a chart, a table, but a lot of work goes into reaching step 5. And we've differentiated the color on steps 2, 3, 4 here because those steps collect the data, clean the data, analyze the data. Those steps are really about building and constructing a data set. A lot of work goes into building a data set so that you can perform analysis. But the most important thing on this slide for where we're at today is actually step 1. It's the beginning. It's what you're supposed to start with. So before you even go about building a data set, you need to give some good thought as to what you want it to be able to tell you. What sorts of questions do you want to be able to answer with it? And the sorts of questions you want to be able to answer inform the data you collect and how you construct your data set. Next slide. So when I say the sorts of questions you want to be able to answer with it, perhaps an even more specific way, or even something to think about before even going to that step 1 is, who is your audience? Because they're the ones who are actually going to really have questions. And so you need to think, who is your audience? What do you need them to know? What do they want to know? And I've quoted a book here. It's a very, very popular book in the field of data storytelling, but I easily could have picked 10 other books by different authors, and these overall messages would have been the same. But I like this one in particular to quote because not only does the author say, you need to identify your audience and think about what you need them to know, but she also gives advice to be as specific as possible about who the audience is for the data. And so going to the next slide, we have attempted here to think about who is the primary audience for this AOR data. And really, when we thought about it, and this is something we're still open to thinking about, but really, the data is collected because it's directed through statute. So the primary audiences are state policymakers. That includes the legislature, that includes the governor's office, that includes the commission itself. So those are the people the data is intended for. What are the kinds of things they hope to get out of it? And then they're not the only audiences by any means. You've got CTCs, local coordinating boards, planners, researchers, and all that, but the needs of the primary audience come first. So when we think about the sorts of questions that we want the AOR data to be able to answer, we need to think, what does the legislature need to know? What does the governor's office need to know? What does the commission itself need to know? Next slide. So wrapping up study deliverables, as mentioned kind of near the beginning, we're assessing the AOR's data collection system. As Commissioner Knight and myself alluded to, there's an advisory work group that's actually part of this study. And that's one of our ways of gathering feedback. We also plan to host a workshop as relates to this study. And our report will recommend strategies in the end and conduct some analyses, but the study should be wrapped up by June 30th or the end of the state fiscal year. Next slide. And so finally, the next steps, we just need to schedule our next work group meeting. We've had a few already. And then as we wrap up this report, we need to identify the data points needed to answer the sorts of questions that we anticipate, the governor's office, the legislature will have. And in doing that, we'll explore various aggregated and disaggregated formats. It's not either or, it's really a spectrum of how aggregated or disaggregated maybe you want your data to be. And then, as I mentioned, also, we will be doing a public workshop around this study, but the date still has yet to be determined. And that's it.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Knight?
No, that is it, Chairman.
Okay. Well, I did want to, I'm being an engineer and a scientist, I'm, very much comfortable and need data. I'm a firm believer in the data model. So I think this is a really good initiative to give us the data that we need to make informed decisions, and not necessarily just rely on our guts or instinct or opinion on those things. And it works. I mean, collecting the data, having the data, you may not need all of it all the time, but you'll have it if you need it. And a couple things. You remember the COVID rescue plan we did. That was based on data. The trip and equipment grant decision on the 8-month versus the full 12 months performance data. That was a data-driven decision-making process, which is it's important for us as stewards of the funding and appointed commissioners. It's just really important for us to make the best decision possible based upon the best information and the best data that's available to us. So again, I'm a firm believer in the data model and making the decisions based on that data. So any questions of anyone, commissioners, any questions for Commissioner Knight, Casey, or Director Darm? Again, this is an informational item. Those next steps are important there. If no questions, then thank you, Commissioner Knight and Casey, for doing this important study for us. Let's move on to the Commission's legislative platforms for this year. Director Darm is going to provide an update for us on priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into this, I just want to mention that the PowerPoint presentation that you see today will be posted on the Commission's website shortly after this meeting. So for those who want to be able to see the information, digest the information that was just presented, it will be available. So have no worries about that. As far as the legislative session, it started last week, and it is a 60-day, our state has a 60-day regular session where they are required at minimum by the end of the 60 days to pass a budget that will go into the next state fiscal year beginning July 1st. As well as they will be considering other bills that deal with more of the policy and the statute changes. So as far as our program goes, we have most of our focus is this year on the budget. And I want to say a special thank you to everybody last year when the issues that we're presenting this year are carried over largely from the discussions we had last year. If those of you who remember, we had a pretty intense legislative session where we were trying to get additional budget authority, and that was the key word. We talked about that last year. Was our trust fund is designed in such a way where revenues come into the trust fund through various sources, but is the legislature that is kind of like acting like the bank. They give us the authority to which we can spend, how much we can spend. And so the requests that you see on this slide are similar to what was presented last year. And I would say we came out of that session last year pretty successful and more people understanding our program as a result of those discussions. So this year we are, the governor has recommended an additional 10.1 million into budget authority for us to spend. That is divvied out in two ways. 4 million, or approximately 4 million, is to be distributed. We're recommending distributing through the trip and equipment grant. That is like a block grant that goes out to all the counties, and that would benefit across the state, and increases to the TD services, as well as supporting, of course, any of the other cost increases that have occurred over the last few years. So that is something that is supported by our existing projected revenue. So we're not asking, to be clear, we're not asking for new revenue. We are simply asking for additional authority to spend what is already being projected to come into the trust fund forecasted over the next few years. And then the other portion of that is 6 million, non-recurring, meaning 1 year, for the Innovative Service Development Grant, or ISD grant program. So that is, this year we had 4 million that the legislature appropriated, and we're going to actually talk about that in a little bit more detail. So our request for the upcoming year is an additional 2 million to go into that for hopefully continuing some of the productive projects, as well as encouraging new projects for the next fiscal year. These are innovative pilot projects that go to expand and test new services for the TD population. So this is the budget recommendations. We also have, I mentioned at the last commission meeting, we also have an administrative budget request of additional pay raises for our staff, as well as trying to create an additional position. Going to the previous topic of data and analytics, we don't have right now currently the expertise within our own team to do the higher level analysis that's needed. So that is also reflected in the governor's recommended budget as well. So overall, we have shared this flyer in the packet that is our legislative platform has gone out to the field. So for those who are coming tomorrow to the TD Day at the Capitol, we encourage you to use that information, distribute that as part of your engagement with legislators. And hopefully that we'll be able to, we've ourselves have briefed the legislative staff on this. We've had some very good conversations, but we will continue as moving into session. It is up to the House and Senate to decide where to go from here. So we will continue to monitor that and update everyone as that progresses into the next few weeks. One last thing on this is also to touch base just on knowing that there may be potential bills that come out of the woodwork or any kind of statutory efforts of changing 427. We wanted to highlight some key objectives that we want to maintain, protect. One, of course, number one is always our program is designed to increase access for people who have no other means of transportation, due to their disability, income, or age. We want to continue to maintain that principal theme of Chapter 427. And on the same takeaway, on the other side of the coin, is us being sure that we continue to be cost effective and good, as the chairman said, good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And that is a very big, important theme as we at the commission are charged with ensuring that those dollars are spent in the manner in which that Chapter 427 specifies. So those are some themes that we are encouraging throughout our dialogue with the legislature in this year and years to come. So I'll take any questions if you have any questions about the platform. Then if
Okay,
not,
given that- yeah.
go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I was gonna say, if there's not any questions, anything else on that one?
That is all from the legislative platform.
Okay, thank you. And again, there's a flyer in the packet if anybody wants to have a nice summary sheet that they could, have with them. Next informational item is the Florida Public Transportation Association, FPTA, will be providing a presentation. FPTA represents various stakeholders, which in the public transportation industry, many of which are CTCs and or deliver CTD funded services. The FPTA will going to present their legislative platform and position discussion on the commission's policy on ADA complementary paratransit services. For just a little background for those who are not aware, the commission prohibits the use of TD trust fund dollars to reimburse the full cost of a paratransit trip afforded under the U.S. Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. In 2021, we did conduct a study and facilitated 2 public workshops on this topic. And afterwards, the commission voted to maintain this policy in accordance with the governing statutes 427 that David just mentioned. If you're interested in learning more about that study, you can go to our commission's website at ctd.fdot.gov and read that full report. I believe Director Lisa Bacot, is going to be making the presentation today. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here, if you can hear me.
Hey, yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Chairman. My name is Lisa Bacot. I'm the director of the Florida Public Transportation Association. I wanted to send regrets on behalf of Clinton Forbes. He was planning on making this presentation. He is the current chair of FPTA and, of course, the director of PalmTran, who's the CTC in Palm Beach County. But he has had a family emergency, so he just sends his regards and lets you all know that he says hello and wishes he could be here. But thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just wanted to emphasize, as always, we're extremely grateful for all of the dollars that you provide to all of the transit systems across the state of Florida. It's a tremendous help to everyone, and certainly most importantly to those vulnerable citizens that are trying to maintain a high quality of living. So we just want to, of course, thank you all for your help and work on that. Next slide. Just a little background on FPTA, although the chair has already kind of outlined this, so thank you. We are a nonprofit association headquartered in Tallahassee. We were incorporated back in 1974 and started out with only 12 members back then and have grown tremendously over these nearly 50 years. And we have over 225 members today of our association, which of course includes rural and urban transit systems, agencies that support transit, and as well as business partners from all over the United States. Next slide, please. And the chair also already kind of spoke about this. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I know all of you, most of you should be probably aware of everything that's going on the last few years. We continue as the FPTA board to be concerned with this policy that was passed. But we also understand that we all have to move forward, and as you guys are, we are too. So we just asked for David if we could just give a brief update on where we are with this policy and what my board is asking that we do to try to address this policy. So next slide. Again, you guys have probably seen this or heard this, that we feel there are numerous issues, the FPTA board, with that policy that was passed, and mostly centered around some federal issues, the funding allocations that were just redone, I guess, a couple of years ago. We're still having difficulty spending those in some areas. We do believe that coordination, this is not the best way to handle coordination, and of course, other administrative policies. So this is just kind of an outline. Again, I know you guys have heard this before of some of the problems that we feel continue with this policy that was set. Next slide. So just important, we thought to note that we do have general support on our position from not only the Federal Transit Administration, they did send us a letter and generally agreed that we are interpreting the situation the way they likely would interpret it. I did want to note that was under the Trump administration, but I do have a copy of the letter. I can resend if anyone wants it. Also, the Community Transportation Association of America. We've actually had a few meetings with their organization, and they developed some talking points that they were going to be taking to different groups, in particular FTA, to just show that ADA is not a funding source and people should not be trip shedding to ADA. Just for background, this also happens with Medicaid quite a bit across the nation, same situation. And then, of course, the American Public Transportation Association also supports our position. FDOT is also going to be studying this issue. I don't really have updated information on where they are with that, but my understanding is they will be studying this issue as well. Next slide. Okay, so that is all leading to what my board would like to do to try to clarify Chapter 427. And so we are going to be recommending some changes to Chapter 427. And this is kind of an outline of what these changes will be that we are presenting. Note that I'm sure all of you know the legislative process is very long and takes a while sometimes for things to, to make it through. Thousands of bills are filed, only a few really pass in the scheme of all the bills that are filed. So we know that this is a long process. We also know this is a complicated issue. It's something that even folks in the industry, it's sometimes hard for them to grasp exactly the intricacies of all of it. So we understand that. The changes that we're kind of looking at to make is to clarify that ADA and that folks should be eligible for both ADA and TD. Living within the corridor, they should be able to use either or program. We also are looking to add 2 members to the commission, one representing a rural county and one representing an urban system, to make sure there's some operating expertise on the board. We do think this is important. Some years ago, this used to be the case that we did have more individuals on the board that were involved with the operations and kind of understood the operations and could have helped guide the commission along those lines. So we are asking that 2 members be added back onto the commission that represented urban and rural CTC. We're also asking that that it's local how the decision is made between ADA and TD. We understand there are many areas that operate very differently. So some areas already do what the CTD, changed and said. There are areas that ADA is only used in the ADA corridor and TD is used on the outskirts. But there are some counties where that's not the way it's been handled locally. So we're asking that each area just make their own decision and that it's identified how they do it and sent to the commission so they understand how it's going to be handled in each county. Some other things that the board did ask that we put into some language is some more flexibility with the Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund grants, allowing pre-award authority, which my understanding is both FDOT and FTA do this. That just means that if you have an allocation that's supposed to be on July 1st and for some reason the grant's not signed, we are asking that pre-award authority be given so you can start billing back to July 1st and not be able to bill until the grant was signed. Kind of similar thing with FDOT and FTA to allow the TD grants to be rolled forward. Again, this was something in the past that was able to be done and something did change. And so we're asking that those be allowed to be rolled forward. If the dollars aren't spent, they can at least be rolled forward to the next year to try to be spent in the same county. This is also useful if there are hurricanes or some natural disaster or, God forbid, another pandemic. We could push those dollars, each county could push those dollars if they weren't used forward if they needed to. And another item, again, this was brought up by the FPTA board, was possibly to look into doing a block grant for the TD trust fund dollars. Again, like some of the other services from FDOT are done, where the TD staff just outlines the eligible expenses, which you already pretty much have done. And it looks like you're making some changes to the AOR possibly. And that these dollars just be given locally. They report back to you how they spent the money, and they're just given out monthly. Again, this would help in emergency situations when trips cannot be billed at the same level that they normally have been billed at, and would certainly reduce staff time for both those at the CTC level as well as the TD commission level. So those are the main tenets of what we're looking to do. Again, we know you guys are not supportive of a lot of this, totally get it. And it is a normal thing for an industry to disagree with something that the state agency does. That is normal. So we're just looking to, attempt to see if we can get some movement on this. Obviously, I want to work with David and the staff on his concerns. Anyone we meet with, I will be saying the TD staff does not agree with this, so they know right up front. We're not hiding anything. And it's a complicated issue, again, as I mentioned, for people to kind of grasp onto. So this is a long process. I think we have a long road ahead of us, but we were asked to talk to you guys about it so you know what we're going to be proposing. I have worked on some actual language changes that I will send to David so he can see those and know exactly how we're wording it. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So I do appreciate you guys letting me talk about this so you know what we're looking at. Next slide. That's it. Again, we're here to help you guys and work with you guys. We know we may not agree on everything, totally get it, but we certainly appreciate the openness allowing us to speak today. Again, Clinton sends his regards. He apologizes he can't be here this week. But he wanted me to stress that the TD dollars are extremely important in Palm Beach County and all over the rest of the state, and that he appreciates the openness that you guys have given us now and in the past. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions for the Director McCoe, but any commissioners, any questions or anything? Conversation?
This is Commissioner Tellez. My question was, in 2021, we had a wonderful workshop. We got to meet several times. I wanted to know if there were any additional data, or my understanding was there was possibly a study that was going to be done. Lisa, was there anything else any new information that came forward?
Well, that was FDOT who was offering to do a study. So I don't have an update on that, on where they are with that. But yes, FDOT had offered to. They had done a study some time ago, and they were going to, kind of update that study. And so I can't answer that for you. We have not done anything, no. We're just hoping to work with FDOT when they start their process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Commissioner Barrios. I'm sorry. I know you said that most people are familiar with the situation. I've only been with the commission for about a year, so I'm probably not as familiar. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more to your comment about people being eligible for both, or trips being eligible for both streams of funding. If you could just expand a little on that.
Yes, so FPTA's position, as well as those other national organizations, is that the ADA is a civil rights legislation. It's not a funded, sponsored program. And so it operates complementary to a fixed route system. Individuals, of course, who cannot get to the bus stop are provided a door-to-door trip on the ADA. There are some areas, as I mentioned, where how they've normally operated, this is locally, they've decided that anyone within the ADA corridor should use ADA. And if you're not in the ADA corridor, then they're going to use transportation disadvantage. But there are some counties where they had not done that in the past. Of course, I'm assuming they've changed their operating, the way they operate now, but they were using funds, both TD and ADA funds within the ADA corridor because individuals are eligible for both, had been eligible for both TD and ADA within the ADA corridor. Some of the larger counties, their ADA corridor is the whole county, or their ADA corridor is 95% of the people that live within the ADA corridor. So it's difficult to use those dollars up outside the ADA corridor if they're no longer allowed to use them within the ADA corridor. So when the commission set that policy, it has restricted some of our agencies from being able to use those dollars freely within their own county.
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up question, if I could. So assuming that's the case, and as a user myself, I know that ADA areas are restricted to within, I don't know, like 3/4 of a mile or something of the nearest bus stop. Would that expand the service territory for the ADA service? Thank you.
No, it wouldn't. And again, ADA is set locally, so some counties it's only within 3/4 mile. Other counties, the whole county is eligible for ADA services. It's just dependent on how the locals have made that decision. So if the county you're in only restricts to 3/4, there would be no change.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners on this?
This is Commissioner Tellez.
Yeah.
I had one other, I guess, observation. You know, the TD requirements and the ADA requirements don't necessarily overlap. If you're for TD dollars to be used for those that are at risk, children as well as low income, that doesn't apply to ADA. So I think if the funds are being used or given to the CTCs to make those decisions, how do we make sure that those populations are being taken care of, or if some of those funds are going more to ADA, and then there's no more funds for those that are low income or at risk?
And I don't know if maybe David wants to answer that one, but
I didn't understand that.
You know, that the local system is determining who is eligible, if they have a disability, if they're elderly, if they're low income or children at risk. So most of that would handled at the local level. Who's getting what service? I don't know if David, you want to add to that?
I'm trying to understand, what was the Commissioner Tellez, your concern was just trying to understand what guarantee is there that other populations that are not eligible for ADA but still fall under the TD qualify or continue to be served?
Correct.
I mean, I think that's part of that goes back to the or one of the reasons why the commission has this policy in place is that if under the federal law, it is guaranteed that access has to be provided at least within the corridor region. If somebody is eligible for ADA services, they're guaranteed access regardless. It's a civil right, as was mentioned earlier. Whereas our dollars, there is no, for somebody to be TD eligible, it's based on the criteria beyond just their disability. And if the dollars run out, there's no guarantee on our program or civil right to guarantee that access. So when we were doing the study, you know, one of the big themes was that the trust fund dollars were designed, and we even went through the history that it was designed this way to be the payer of last resort and to ensure that there's a stopgap. So when people don't have access, whether it's because they have no personal vehicle, they have no family member, they have no other agency like Medicaid covering their trip. These dollars are meant to be used to fill that gap. So that's kind of the basis or premise behind the policy.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that
Okay.
definitely answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions, Director. One, the two additional members, are you asking, I mean, are you proposing that they be commissioners or advisors to the commission?
Commissioners.
Commissioners, okay, got you. And then just kind of a follow-up question. The proposed changes, you said you drafted some language. Is there a sponsor? Is there a House Senate bill number? Anything
No,
that we can reference?
No, no.
Not yet. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, keep us informed. I mean, if as that moves along, of course, working with Director Darm there, and like you said, it's a complicated issue. There's a lot of strings attached here and there. So understand. All right. So with that, thank you very much for the information and the presentation. We'll move to the Executive Director report. Director Darnold will provide a few more updates pertaining to our grant programs and some upcoming events. So with that, Director Darnold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just real quick, in the packet that we provided y'all under the Executive Director report, there was we attached some of the projected allocations for the trip and equipment grant as well as the planning grant, emphasizing that these are projections, they're not, or estimates, they're not yet the final allocations because we are in the middle of legislative session. So that is yet to be determined based on what will be ultimately reflected in the General Appropriations Act. The legislative session ends May 5th, I believe. So we would likely have the final projections available by the May commission meeting that we have for that. But in the meantime, we wanted to get everybody up to speed and share with you that based on what's in the governor's recs, we showed a comparison of what is in the governor's recs with that 4 million versus what is under the existing budget authority if that was not to be picked up. So you can see a side-by-side comparison in a county level. As you recall, we have a new formula now, and those variables are based on there are 4 components. There's the estimated TD population that's coming from census data, the American Community Survey. We also have public roads coming from the Federal Highway Administration. Both those are based on the most recent data available through those sources. And then there's a performance variable that's based on the trips, the miles, and the bus passes that were reimbursed under the trip and equipment grant. Chair Stevens alluded to earlier that in the last last year, we had to make a decision as a board as to how to apply that because of the impact of COVID. So I don't know if you all remember, but that was looking at fiscal year 1920, which was when COVID just stepped in around March of 2020. So now that we're through that cycle, we are skipping a year and we're moving to looking at the most recent fiscal year data. So that is from July 1 of 2021 through June 30th, 2022, because that year was less affected by COVID than the year before that. So we're, in essence, to make this simple, is we're up to speed or up to date. And those projections are based on those most recent numbers. So that's the trip and equipment grant side. On the planning grant side, we are also projecting an adjustment, a slight increase in those allocations. That is based on a rule that we have in place when the state workforce gets a bump in raise by the legislature. our rule states that we adjust accordingly in our planning grant allocations. I think the logic is that the planning agencies kind of are similar in function the way us as staff are to the commission. They play a similar role to the local coordinating boards. So our grant projections are based on that 5% increase that we got this past year with the state workforce raises. On the Innovative Service Development Grant, a few updates. We are going to have a workshop this afternoon at 1:30 to receive some presentations from the existing grant projects. And then we'll also have a second workshop next week on Wednesday morning at 9:30 to receive the other half of those presentations. Those are from the current fiscal year, so the ones that we already awarded that $4 million for. So this is a chance for commissioners and advisors to ask questions and think about these projects, especially if they are going to be reapplying. We also have our application process for the next grant cycle open that we started back in February. And there is an early bird deadline for those who want to submit their applications early and get feedback from us. Please send those to us. Those are really, really helpful, both for us and for those projects, because it gives you a chance to really look at ways to improve your proposals. And the deadline for the early bird is St. Patty's Day, so on Friday. We appreciate those who've already submitted. We've gotten a few already, so please try to take advantage of that. We will come back in April, on April 6th, to have a second training webinar where we will talk about some of the findings from those from a general standpoint, what some common areas is that we need to see improvement or any other guidelines that we can provide before the final deadline, which is April 14th. Now, the tricky part of this grant is that we are in the middle of legislative session, so a lot of the things that we're talking about are contingent on the legislature. So if changes do occur in the GAA, if there's such as maybe changing any kind of requirements or proviso, we would of course have to adjust our process accordingly. But we also need to set time. We're balancing that with the fact that we need time as staff and subcommittee that reviews these applications to go through a thorough analysis and evaluation of those proposals. So we'll keep y'all posted on where things go with the legislature, but in the meantime, we are sticking to our timeline as far as the application process for April 14th deadline, with a goal of hopefully having, if everything goes according to plan, we'll have the discussion at the May Commission meeting for approval of those if the funding is picked up. One last thing on the grants is the Shirley Conroy. That is that 1.4 million that we do for purchase of capital equipment. As many of you know, we have been having challenges, based on what's going on in the economy, that many of our systems have not been able to acquire the vehicles or their equipment because of the supply chain shortages, which is way outside of their control. We are working with FDOT on this piece, but we do want to let everyone know that as far as the intent going forward is that we are going to recommend as a staff that for the projects the current year that we awarded funds to that have been unable to be able to purchase their equipment, we want to recommend that they be given at least first priority and consideration in the next grant cycle, given that these are circumstances that are outside of their control. So we'll have that information. We're going to release that soon as far as the application process for the Shirley Conroy as well as the other grant programs. And Sherry, if there's anything I missed, please let me know. But I think, I guess one last thing is to say before I forget is thanks to everybody who is going to be participating in tomorrow's TD Day. And I want to thank Lisa Bacot and her team as always for helping us coordinate that event. It's very important that we have representation and that our voices, our advocacy voices are heard when we convene tomorrow. So thank you all for allowing us to be able to continue to do that event.
Okay, thank you, Director Darm. Any questions or comments about the Executive Director report? If not, we'll move on to Commissioner and Advisor reports. So is there any reports from any commissioners and or advisors in today's meeting? Okay, hearing none, we will move to the second public comment segment. Remember, this can be on any topic that you wish. It doesn't have to be agenda related. Again, limited to 5 minutes per speaker. So with that, were there any forms turned in for this second round? Any forms turned in, Director Nar?
Sorry, no other forms.
Okay. Anyone on the webinar or on the phone? Remember, you have to hit *6 to unmute, or remember to unmute the webinars. Have any public comments? Okay, I don't hear any. I don't see any. So with that, this will conclude our business meeting. We want to thank everyone who participated. I know time is very valuable. We will hold a public workshop this afternoon. It's going to be one of two to receive presentations on the current year projects funded under the Innovative Service Development Grant Program. We'll have an additional workshop next Wednesday, March 22nd at 9:30 a.m. to cover the ones that we don't get to today. So we're going to have two different sessions because the number of presentations, we didn't want to try to do it all in one day and exhaust everyone. So we want to be alert and give it the attention that it's due. So so that's next week at 9:30 a.m. The next commission business meeting is May 25th in Charlotte County. We will be sending out details about that in the next few weeks. So with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Knight makes a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Someone seconds that motion.
Commissioner Gray, I second the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. With that, this business meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.